we go.
There we go.
All right.
Sorry
Yeah,
about that.
they don't make it easy. No, thank you. Um, all right. Am I good to
You're
roll?
good to roll.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much for troubleshooting all of this stuff. Um, Also, I think I'm going to take questions at the end if anybody's got any.
Yeah,
So
and
hang
the
tight.
best way to do that is to put questions in chat. That's a
Yeah,
great
I'll
way to
be
do it.
happy to answer. All right. So hi, I'm Rosemary Mosco. I'm a cartoonist and science writer. And I am really thrilled to be here. You'll need to bear with me a little bit. I just got over the worst flu I've had in ages and ages and ages. This is my one of my first times upright. So if I make any really wild jokes and flights of fancy, blame the flu and not me. So I have been birding my whole life, ever since I could hold my first pair of binoculars. And here I am with my very first pair of binoculars on Torrey Pines, which is actually in Southern California, one of my favorite places to go as a kid. Or ever since I could climb a mountain for boreal birds. So here I am on Mount Mansfield in Vermont. Or since I could hold out my hand to feed black-capped chickadees. And there I am near my childhood home of Ottawa, Canada, which is where I am currently close to located. And I've been doing this so long, honestly, that my mind starts to wander. So you've probably had this. If you do one thing for a really long time, you start to think strange and funny things. And so one of the things I was thinking a few months ago was, what if I had the abilities of the birds that I'm observing? And of course, I first thought, oh, it'd be great to fly, or oh, it'd be great to sing. But then I thought, well, what if I could do all the other things that birds do? So I made this comic called Bird Abilities I Wish I Had. So we've got flying, of course. We've got singing complex songs. Someone replied to this comic with, well, you can sing complex songs now, to which I replied, try me. You don't want to hear it. Carving wood with my face, eating shrimp to become pink, storing food in now I'm never sure if it's guller or gooler. I think it's gooler pouch, like the pelicans, not needing winter leg wear because I would have an incredible countercurrent exchange system in my legs, keeping me toasty, being a symbol of peace, being an omen, and then of course the ability to steal chips with no criminal or legal repercussions. And those all sound pretty great to me. So I also make comics about the birding experience, more specifically, and I'm making fun of myself when I do this. So I take a lot of bird photos. A lot of us do. This is me. I'm actually not sure. I think this might be. Gosh, all beaches look the same. Was this Crescent City? I'm not sure.
Hmm.
But I am like, head to toe covered in grime and slime and, skulking along trying to get close to seabirds. And sometimes my photos turn out okay. I'm not a professional, but sometimes I'm proud of them. This was an American tree sparrow I was pretty proud of. More often, this is one I took just last week. This is what they look like. I blame the flu for this one. So there's a pine grosbeak on the bottom right if you squint really hard. But the best photos I take are the ones that I take in my head because they are imagined photos that I've taken because I've seen something really cool and I left my camera at home. So I made this comic and it was one of the most relatable ones I've done, which made me really happy. It turns out it's not just me. So it says, when you remember to bring your camera and all you get is one osprey and it's mostly occluded by sticks. And then when you forget to bring your camera, and that's when the real party shows up. And this panel is full of secret in jokes. There's a Brewster's warbler, which is a hybrid of the golden-winged blue-winged warbler. There's a Steller's sea eagle there, which is an homage to that one that moved here, came here through Alaska, came down to Texas, went up to the East Coast. There's a Diana fritillary. I'm also a big butterfly watcher. Those butterflies in the top left too are rare Florida ones. Diana fritillary is also a really rare butterfly. I haven't had the privilege of seeing. I would love to. And the males are orange, the females are blue. There's all kinds of other hidden stuff in here. There's a Kirtland's warbler, there's a king eider, and all that good stuff. I had a really good time with that one. So that's the kind of thing I do. Why do I do this? How and why do I do this? And how did this happen? So I'm going to explain how I became a bird humor writer slash cartoonist. I'm not really sure what to call myself to this day. Um, sometimes I just say I make poop jokes about birds, but then people don't understand what that means. I'll tell you my origin story, such as it is. So I grew up in Ottawa, Canada, and that's this little red dot on the map. As you can see, it's actually farther south than a lot of the US, the more northern parts of the US, because Canadians like to kind of cluster close to the heater because it gets awfully cold. It still gets awfully cold in Ottawa. And I loved it. It was a really beautiful outdoorsy place. So there were two things that I loved to do. One was, and I showed this picture earlier, but feed the black-capped chickadees at my local park. And this is classic Canadian childhood. So I've got a scarf that my mom knitted for me. I'm in like a spruce, or sorry, a birch conifer forest. And I'm feeding, this northern bird, and the snow is up to my knees. And then the other thing I like to do was read books. So I adored reading any book that was about science. This is my mom. I love that 70s, 80s hairstyle she's got going on. And it's almost like a mullet, actually. It's amazing. And there's me, and then my little sister down with the pacifier, and then a family friend in the blue shirt. And I don't know what we're reading, but we're reading some nature book, and I could tell because it's got this green cover. So those are the things I loved. And I grew up in the 80s slash early 90s. So you can tell this by the plumage, which I wore at the time. So this is me getting ready for a jazz dance performance. And that was back when, I don't know if this is still the case, your mom would make your dance outfit. So my poor mom had to make this thing out of spandex and sequins and a tutu and a visor. And you cannot get more 80s than this neon situation that I've got here. But because of when I grew up, I was really into newspaper comics. I know there's been a few different heydays of newspaper comics, but that just felt like for me, it was the greatest thing was reading newspaper comics every day, and then all the Sunday comics were incredible. So I loved The Far Side. I loved Calvin and Hobbes, which if you're not aware, kids still love, which makes me really happy. Bloom County and For Better For Worse and so many others. I was just obsessed with them. So that was what I did was I combined my love of nature with my love of reading and especially my love of comics, and I made my own comics. So this is a comic sort of book that I made. These are just excerpts from it, but that I found recently because we were cleaning out my childhood home so my mom could move into an apartment, which is partly why I'm in Canada, is because I'm close to her to help take care of her. And we found this thing I made which was a catalog for ants. And so there's the cover is here, ant catalog. Those are two supermodel ants wearing the latest ant fashions. And then the whole thing was full of ads. So we've got this ad for Bird Beware, which I guess would be spraying your northern flickers to keep them away from your ant nests. And then there's this thing called Yum Chopper, which is it chops caterpillars, worms, cell bugs, etc. in a few minutes. And so that way you can regurgitate chopped, bug into your larvae's mouths without having to masticate it yourself. Anyway, this is a bit, I actually don't know that I've ever shown this one because I just thought this was so funny to add in recently. It's there was a toy when I was a kid called Puppy Surprise, and I don't know, please mention the chat if you remember this one. But it was the weirdest toy. It basically, you bought this toy, and then inside of this dog were, I think it was three, four, or five puppies, and you never knew how many you were going to get. So it was a surprise, puppy surprise. So I made an ad for Pupy Surprise. So how many pupies are there inside? And there could be four or five, six or 600, I think that's billion pupae inside. Anyway, yeah, so that was the kind of kid that I was. And so I loved science and I loved art, and I dreaded the moment when I would have to pick one of them and abandon the other one forever. So when I was a kid, and there have been many times like this in the past too, science and art were seen as two very separate things. The people who did one did not do the other, and I have very stereotyped views of scientists and artists, as exemplified by these stock images. More recently, people have been using, I think maybe in the last 10, 15 years, people added an A to STEM, so science, technology, engineering, and math, and they added the A for arts to make it seem. And so there's been more of an interest in art, but it still feels like there's a little bit of an afterthought there. So I just had this thought that I had to pick one or the other. I couldn't do both. But I had this idea, which was that when I went to college, I would pick one to be my major and pick another one to be my minor. Now, a thing you need to know is that Canadian colleges are big and busy, and you can have a class with 1,000 kids in them. And so my advisor had no time for this. He said, no, absolutely not. The paperwork is going to be ridiculous. Nobody combines science and art. Just pick one. It'll be fine. And so that's what I did. I wound up majoring in anthropology, which for some reason was an art, even though there was a lot of science. That was kind of my thinking was there was a lot of science, but it wasn't a great fit. I learned a lot, but I felt really lost. And I've since learned that my advisor was in fact really wrong because mixing science and art is a long-standing tradition. And I'm going to share some of my favorite examples of this combination with a special mind to birds, but there's one non-bird example. So a lot of folks don't know that Galileo painted as well and made these beautiful paintings of the moon. I think they're just gorgeous. I mean, I would like, I just love how the shadow darkens as it approaches the where the light is. It's just incredible. I would put these on my wall. I mean, they're just so beautiful. And so that's like a really good example of mixing art and science. The painting of the dodo here is really interesting. So this is a painting by a fellow named Ustad Mansour, who was in the court of the Mughal emperor at the time he painted this, 1625. Now, if you think of a dodo, you probably think of the one painted by a guy named Roland Savaret. There was this guy named Roland Savaret who claimed he saw a live dodo. He painted this very, I don't know how to describe it. It's not flattering. It has like a really fluffy tail, a sort of big goofy grin. It doesn't look like a bird that could actually survive. It looks really goofy. It's very pale colored. And so he painted this, and that's the dodo that Lewis Carroll used for Alice in Wonderland. That's kind of the cartoon dodo is based on the Savaret dodo. However, Savaret probably only saw a dead dodo that was kind of faded, that the jaw was peeling back, didn't look great. But Mansour probably saw an alive dodo because the Mughal emperor likely had a dodo in his aviary. And so this might be our only painting of a true live dodo. And nowadays, scientists are using the Mansour dodo to understand what these birds look like. And they look really different, at least in my eyes. I mean, that dark head, the blue on the bill, that bright eye, truly an incredible painting, I think. And the other birds around it you're probably familiar with, or at least you know some birds that are related to them. And he clearly knew his stuff. So there's definitely some factual accuracy going on here. The drawing here of Darwin's finches, I think, is really interesting. I recently went down a rabbit hole where I was wondering, okay, who drew the famous Darwin's finches? Because it wasn't Darwin. He did not draw with this level of skill. And sure enough, it was a woman who has gone unsung. It was Elizabeth Gould. She was the wife of the famed ornithologist John Gould, and she made this beautiful art. And I think, deserves to be credited for this stunning work. And then I didn't need to go any farther than all the field guides that I had. I didn't have David Sibley when I was growing up, but all the field guides I had, Peterson, Golden, all these books combine science and art in just the most beautiful ways. So I came to see that art and science reinforce and help each other, but it was a conclusion that I had to sort of reach and stumble across on my own over time. Now, though, I'm really lucky. I get to combine art and science to share important information. And so here are four examples of me doing this, but I'm not going to go through and read them because they're very long. I'm just going to explain what they are. So the one on the far left is an illustration I made with a group called Bird Friendly London. That's London, Ontario, not the bigger London, trying to explain why rodenticides are a problem for birds of prey and other wildlife. And then the comic in the middle is one that I made with a marine biologist called Tommy Tucker. So if you're not aware, there is a whale living in the Gulf called the Rice's whale. It is basically our baleen whale. It is only found in American and Mexican waters, although American in the broader, North and Central American sense and South American. And it is truly fascinating whale. They're enormous, and there may be only 50 of them left. And so I made this comic with Tommy Tucker to try to raise awareness of this whale, which is a whale that the officials do not want you to know about because they want to keep drilling and sending lots of ships through the Gulf, and that imperils the Rice's whale. And then the one on the right is about what to do to stop birds from hitting windows. And this I made with an organization called FLAP, which is out of Toronto. And so this explains what to do to keep your windows safe. Sorry, one moment. I'm just opening a window. I'm regulating the heat in a newly finished room that I've moved to. My work frequently uses something I loved as a kid, and that thing is humor. So for a long time, I was worried that if I used humor, people would not perceive me as being intelligent and full of knowledge. And there are studies to back this up. There's studies that show that funny people, especially funny women, are not seen as knowledge holders. But the thing about adding humor to science outreach is it's kind of a no-brainer because if you add a joke to any piece of science outreach, it will spread to places you cannot imagine. And that's why I say humor gives science wings, no matter how dry. So I've done comics about the phosphorus cycle. I've done comics about bogs. I've done comics about all kinds of things. And adding a little bit of a joke has spread them to new places. So I think it's a really powerful tool. There's even a precedent for nature humor, even if there aren't as many examples of it. So here is an example from 1907, and this is a little book. You can still find copies of it. It is not in high demand, by Robert Williams Wood, who was a physicist. He actually had a really incredible, illustrious career, but he made this little book called How to Tell the Birds from the Flowers. And I think he also made the beautiful woodcuts that go with them. And so it's pretty much what you would imagine. It explains how to tell birds from flowers. So here's an example, the parrot and the carrot. So he says, the parrot and the carrot we may easily confound. They're very much alike in looks and similar in sound. We recognize the parrot by his clear articulation, for carrots are unable to engage in conversation. He's a pretty good poet too. Like there's some good, assonance and stuff in there. And another example that had an outsized impact on me was A Field Guide to Little Known and Seldom Seen Birds of North America by Ben, Catherine, and John Sill, which came out in 1988. There's also a sequel, and they also came out with a mock birdwatching magazine called Beyond Birding or Birdwatching, which is one of the funniest things. If you don't have a copy of these, you need to find them. They're incredible. And what they are is the driest fake bird guides with exquisite watercolors by John Sill of birds that do not exist and are incredibly silly. So I've got a page here showing they have the greater and lesser yellowlegs, but then they have hypothetical yellowleg species like a middle yellowlegs and a greatest yellowlegs and a very least yellowlegs. And all their stuff is just very dry like this. And as a little kid, it actually took me halfway through the book before I realized this book was a joke. And then once I realized that, it was one of the funniest things I'd ever read. I've found that I can use this combination of art, science, humor to help people appreciate and love birds, even the ordinary ones that people find boring or even dislike. And so that's what I'm going to talk about for the next little bit is ordinary birds. Because if you know me, you know that I'm obsessed with some of the birds that people find very boring. Although I'm going to do my best to convince you that these birds are in fact really interesting with some fun facts. So perhaps no bird is more hated than this one here, especially if you're a golfer. My mom is a golfer. And Canada geese are, people call them cobra chickens. There's all kinds of mean things we say about them. But what I think is interesting about this behavior is that if a human behaved like this, we would consider them honorable. So this is a bird that is bravely defending probably a nest in there from, this terrifying human wielding these giant literal clubs made of iron and wood. I still feel bad for the golfer, but yeah, the goose is being honorable. And so I tried to kind of flip things around and I made a defense of Canada geese called the Canada Goose, a role model for our time. So here's some traits of Canada geese that I think we should admire them for. They are assertive. I wish I was more assertive. They are brave. I would not fight a swan, and I'm much taller than a swan, but a Canada goose will. They are good parents. They will defend their young. Do not let your dog come anywhere near a goose with young. It's not a good idea. they're team players. It's really incredible how they will work together so that they take advantage of all of their power and, use the minimum energy possible to fly in a V. They also have a crisp modern aesthetic, which I think you will find many stars are ripping off for such vaunted events as the Met Gala. Here we've got Timothée Chalamet in 2021, clearly doing his best Canada Goose. And here we've got Nicole Kidman in 2024, several years afterwards, again, doing the Canada Goose thing. And, I think doing it beautifully. And then high fiber diet. They eat a high fiber diet. My doctor's always telling me to increase fiber. So they're very admirable birds. Ordinary birds aren't just funny. I think they're really interesting because they spend the most time around humans. And so they can actually tell quite a bit about us because they fit their lives around us in ways that I think not all of us are even aware. And they can tell us a lot about our history. And so that's very true of the next bird I'm going to talk about, which if the Canada goose is most hated, this may be second most hated, or maybe this is most hated. I think it depends on who you are. But this is the house sparrow, Passer domesticus. I wrote an article for Audubon called Meet the Little Brown Bird that holds a mirror up to humanity. Whether we love, hate, or ignore the familiar house sparrow, its story can teach us about how we relate to the natural world and each other. I'm not going to try to convince you to love house sparrows, I promise. But I think understanding them is not only useful, but it's also fascinating because their story is very bizarre. So their story with humans begins around 11,000 years ago when people began to farm in the Middle East. So this would have been this very particular area called the Fertile Crescent, which is also coincidentally where pigeons first encountered humans. And sparrows responded to this by flying down and hanging out with the people. And they didn't just do that. They didn't just fly down and eat the grain of the people there. They actually changed their bodies substantially to fit into this new niche. So there has been some really fascinating work on these sparrows. And the reason we know about the changes that these house sparrows underwent was that there was one subspecies of house sparrow called the Bactrianus Passer domesticus Bactrianus subspecies. And this one decided not to hang out with people. You can still find them. They live way out, far away from people. They refuse to be near us. They're much more skittish, but we can compare them physiologically and skeletally with the house sparrows. And so here we've got a skull of a wild house sparrow on the top and a commensal house sparrow on the bottom. And you can't really see differences, but the lower skull actually is tougher and has a thicker beak and a more robust skull. And that's because when we started growing grain, we started breeding grains that were bigger, chunkier, and we started to, make these things that were a little more challenging. They're more nutritious for us, but a little more challenging for a little bird to eat. And so they actually got bigger, tougher bills. And then really interestingly, they also changed their guts. So there was a steady signatures of human commensalism in the house sparrow genome. I apologize for all the text. This is the most text I'm going to have on any slide, but I think it's so interesting. So they found that the strongest selected region encompasses part of the amylase gene family, which has previously been linked to adaptation to high starch diets in humans and dogs. So when we started farming, our guts changed so that we could eat more starch. Our dogs' guts also changed so they could eat the starches that we were eating. And sparrows also changed so they could eat more starch, which I think is incredible. So they basically adapted to live associated with people in every way. And so then those farmers started to spread out into Europe. So here's the picture by 1800. They started to spread out into Europe and into other places too, but relevantly for our purposes to Europe. And so the humans are spreading, and the sparrows 100% rely on these people now. They need these people, except for that Bactriana subspecies. So they start following the farmers wherever they go. And ecologist Rob Dunn actually calls them native to humanity now. But then by 2019, which was kind of the most recent map I could find, but this is where they are. They are now all over the world. And so they arrived in the US in the 1950s. Now, I think this is so interesting because I will ask bird experts, like, well, why are house sparrows here? And many people have no idea. And until I researched this article, I also had no idea. I thought that house sparrows made it to the US maybe by hitching a ride on a ship, or maybe there was that guy who released a bunch of birds that Shakespeare had wanted to release and had mentioned, and so maybe that was it. There were also naturalization societies that were maybe trying to make America more like Europe, which is a little closer to the truth. But the real reason is caterpillars. So what was going on was that in the 1840s in the US, there were these caterpillars called elm spanworms, and they were dangling from trees. They were people were bumping into them. They were eating all of the leaves in the city trees, and people did not like them. And they were one of just many, many species of caterpillars that were having outbreaks that were honestly just kind of grossing people out, and in some cases also having agricultural consequences. So I love this excerpt from a story from the Brooklyn Evening Star from 1841. It says, any suggestions on this subject would be desirable, as it is painful to see the ladies, who usually delight in shade and verdure, quitting the cover of the trees and seeking the hottest blaze of the noontide sun to escape these worms which let themselves down by their webs as sailor boys do upon ropes. So we have this crushing image of these beautiful ladies rushing out from under the shade to wilt in the sun because these soldier boy or these sailor boy caterpillars are slowly dangling down onto them. So truly a civilization ending crisis. But men were not immune. This story from 1859 from the New York Times talks about the horrible things that were happening to men, which were all men who wear a mustache have even this year shuddered to find occasionally that the brown wretches were dangling from their cherished ornaments. That's their, beautiful mustaches. When their waxed ends have broken the web by which the inchworm was climbing back to the branch from which the wind had shaken it. So we've got spanworms and mustaches. We've got spanworms, terrifying ladies. Something must be done. So if we go back to that original story, the next paragraph starts, it was suggested at a meeting of intelligent men the other evening that an importation of English sparrows would do much in keeping the trees free from worms. And that is what happened. So a bunch of intelligent men decided to get together. And of course, these were wealthier gentlemen, because they were able to get together and decide for all of North America that bringing in house sparrows was a good idea. And this was one of them. This is Nicholas Pike. And so he imported house sparrows in 1850 to New York, and they were slowly imported to all sorts of other areas. And at first, they were really beloved. And there was a thing where a lot of folks saw European birds as superior, so they thought these birds would conquer and do beautifully, and they nurtured them. But then, of course, over time, things went badly. And by the 1970s, a press battle had erupted about whether the sparrows were good or bad. And this was a vicious battle that started among scientists, spilled into the press, and was called the Sparrow War. So, in a way, we sort of went to war, at least in the press, over sparrows. Here's the thing. House sparrows do impact wildlife, and their impacts to wildlife are very important to discuss. But what I learned was that the Sparrow War was not very scientific, even though it started with scientists. It really misjudged the effects of sparrows. For example, they said that the sparrows would destroy all of US agriculture, which didn't even come close to happening. But they misunderstood that actually sparrows, well, one, they misunderstood that sparrows also eat insects, but they also misunderstood or sorry, also eat seeds. But they also misunderstood that sparrows are very good at transmitting diseases to other birds as well. And so they really failed to capture the nuance of the sparrow situation. So it wasn't about sparrows, good or bad. It was about people. And so I love this quote from Amy Tan's beautiful Backyard Bird Chronicles. She says, I heard others call a house sparrow a junk bird and invasive like the European starling. I understand the antipathy. Invasive birds usurp habitat and resources, but I can't help but feel discomfort. The rhetoric is often the same as the racist ones I hear about Chinese people. And she is onto something here because that is what the Sparrow War was about. It was a proxy for complaining about immigrants. And so in the 1870s, immigration was picking up, prejudice was rampant, and the Sparrow War is just seething with anti-immigrant rhetoric. So here is a quote from Frank Bowles, the secretary of Harvard University at the time. He says, "The English sparrow," that's the house sparrow, "stands to me as the feathered embodiment of those instincts and passions which belong to the lowest class of foreign immigrants." And this is honestly one of the tamer things that I came across. There was also oops, there was also a poetry battle, a really bad poetry battle. So there was a fellow named William Cullen Bryant who wrote in 1869 a very terrible pro-sparrow poem, which includes the ethnically charged lines, "A winged settler has taken his place with Teutons and men of Celtic race. He has followed their path to our hemisphere. The old world sparrow at last is here." So again, like really, really mixing it with immigration. And then by 1881, Fred Mather retorted with a poem which is pretty terrible and has this section: "American freedom has been much abused, but our long-suffering people some morning will see communists and sparrows thrown into the sea." So, kind of a wild period of our history that many of us are unaware of. And so I love what historian Daniel Immerwahr says. He says popular understandings of nature connect to politics as people look to the natural order to legitimate the social one. And house sparrows really serve as a cautionary tale about how prejudices can seep into our interpretation of the natural world and how we have to be careful about that. Um, and there is another ordinary bird that many people have prejudices against that I absolutely love. And so I'm going to take a very, very, very quick diversion into that bird. Because this is, of course, the pigeon. I wrote a book about it called A Pocket Guide to Pigeon Watching, Getting to Know the World's Most Misunderstood Bird. And this is a bird that I love so much. Again, you do not have to love it. That's completely fine. But there are things I really like about them. And one of my favorite things is that I like to liken pigeons to puppies, which I know is a bit of a stretch, but bear with me. Here is why I think pigeons are puppies. So every single time you see a stray dog or a dog at the pound, that's a mutt, what you're seeing is a feral animal that descended from stock that was domesticated by humans thousands of years ago. Every time you see a pigeon in North America, and that's these city pigeons, what you're seeing, excuse me, oh, pardon me, I'm getting intensely emotional about pigeons. What you see is a feral animal that was domesticated from stock that was domesticated thousands of years ago, potentially 5,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago, potentially more. And you can see this in the variety of these animals. So when you see a pack of stray dogs, what you see is variety in terms of shape and coat color and pattern. And when you adopt a beautiful mutt, that's what you get. Same thing. Oh, I'm so sorry. I think this is the very tail end of my little flu rearing its ugly head. So when you see a flock of pigeons, this is also what you see, is you see an astonishing variety of birds. And if you may not notice it from, not being more aware of dog breeds than maybe pigeon breeds, but you'll notice colors, you'll notice patterns, and you'll sometimes even notice differences in plumage. And so I like to say that these two birds, or these two creatures, the bird and the dog, have somewhat similar histories. It's just that one of these animals we have forgotten about. Pigeons are also powerful communications technology. So if you take a pigeon and you carry it very far from its nest and you release it, and you attach, this is, I think, a little World War II pigeon canister. You attach a little canister with a note to its leg. That bird will fly faithfully home. And so people have been using them for this purpose for, centuries, if not millennia. And pigeons were used all the way up through World War I, World War II, and released by soldiers who found themselves trapped behind enemy lines, or found themselves in some other situation where there was no other way for them to communicate with their base. And so they would desperately release a pigeon, which would fly back to base and carry information and save countless lives. And many pigeons wound up being decorated war heroes, like Cher Ami, who is maybe the most famous war hero pigeon from World War I. Cher Ami had his leg shot off, as you can see. Poor bird. but he received a medal. And then G.I. Joe, the pigeon on the right, received, so sorry, please bear with my coughing. Pardon me. G.I. Joe received a medal called the Dickon Medal, which was a medal that was awarded from the UK for animals that performed some sort of gesture that was seen as gallant. And so here, G.I. Joe, it has a little medal that says in beautiful cursive gallantry. And both these birds were released by soldiers who were trapped behind enemy lines, wound up getting hit by friendly fire, and released these birds in order to say, please come and save us. Or that's the very short version of their stories, which were much more complicated. And so I just want to point out that there are a whopping 32 pigeons that won the Dickon Medal. These are all the pigeons, this is from Wikipedia, with all of their wonderful names. We've got Billy, we've got Scotch Lass, we've got Gustav, Patty, incredible stories behind all these birds. So 32 pigeons won the Dickon Medal. Now, if you're a fan of cats, I want you to look away for the next slide because do you want to know how many cats won the Dickon Medal? One. We have one cat. It won for eating rats on a ship, which I think is the kind of thing that a cat would do anyway. I'm just saying. And so I think that this shows how brave and amazing pigeons are. I took a quick look at the iNaturalist sightings for pigeons in the Mendocino area. And I found this absolutely stunning bird here. Just an incredible example of that mutt coloration that I was explaining. It has what are called white flights, these white feathers. It's got a checkerboard pattern on its wings, which actually comes from humans crossbreeding the city pigeon with an incredible African checkered pigeon at some point in its past. We don't know why people did this, but it obviously made for a beautiful trait that is carried through. We've got this white speckling, which has a lot of complex genetics. The bird is the sort of typical blue coloration, although there's lots of other colorations they can have. And so get out there and look at your local pigeons because they are astonishing. Both male and female pigeons feed their young milk, which is one of my favorite facts about pigeons. They produce it in a region of their esophagus called their crop. The milk is stimulated by a hormone called prolactin. And if you're someone who has had kids, you will be aware of prolactin as the same hormone that stimulates lactation in humans. I want to point out that pigeons evolved the ability to make milk separately from humans. So it's a convergent evolutionary thing. So it's basically a really cool solution that we stumbled across independently because it's so amazing. Their milk contains fats and proteins and just all kinds of incredible stuff. And so this is why this was my Christmas card from a few years ago. Happy holidays. Remember to put out some kind of milk for Santa. I want to point out that if you're thinking of putting out pigeon milk for Santa, it is chunkier than mammalian milk, and so maybe don't do that one. And I'm going to share one more ordinary bird with an amazing story. And this is the herring gull. I know you have a lot more gulls on the West Coast than just the American herring gull, and it's kind of a boring one. But I think that these gulls are really neat, and I wrote an article on this one particular gull called The Ballad of U2, How One Mischievous Bird Taught Me to Love Gulls Even More. And so I'm going to start by saying that if you see a bird with a band, any sort of band around its ankle, but especially one that has a silver band, which is called a federal band, try to get a photo of it. And for as long as the website lasts, which we'll have to see, report it to reportband.gov. They will also sometimes have a colorful band. That's called the auxiliary band. You can report that too. And so here's an example of a time I saw a black skimmer in Florida. I reported it and you get a certificate of appreciation, which makes you feel really good. You're contributing to bird data. And it's especially easy to get, not easy, but it's possible to get those numbers on those bands with some of the modern telephoto lenses. So you can sneaky creep around a bird and take lots of pictures of the numbers. So one day I was photographing a banded bird and I was so excited to be doing so. And I witnessed a crime. And so that was that American herring gull that I mentioned. This was on a beach in Massachusetts. And so I saw the bands. I got really excited. I bent down. I started snapping away. And then in a matter of seconds, the gull ran up to this beach bag, ripped it open, ripped open a plastic bag that was inside, started pecking at that, pulled out a bag of goldfish crackers, started ripping that open. This was when I decided I should not be taking pictures of this. And the people who owned the goldfish crackers came running up. They started yelling. I was mortified. I slunk off with my telephoto lens. The whole thing was just a total debacle. But I got enough photos to get both the auxiliary band of this bird, which was a green band that had a white U10 on it, and also the federal numbers. And so I dutifully reported this. But what was interesting was I didn't just get a certificate, I also got lots of enthusiastic emails from and social media replies from people who know this gull U2 and who banded him, and they love him so much. He is maybe their favorite gull. So there's this little island called Appledore in Maine, off the coast of Maine, where people will band herring gulls, although nowadays they mostly focus on great blackback gulls. And they do it on a volunteer basis. It's absolutely wild. It's this incredible long-running story. These heroes, because here they are. Here are two of the researchers climbing the rocks and holding up a stick because the gulls will attack them. They're also wearing bicycle helmets because the gulls will dive bomb them and bite them. They're covered in poop. They're being attacked. One person told me that they held up a notebook and the gull flew down and grabbed their notebook and flew around and around and then dropped it on another gull's head. So these gulls are wild, but they will do this research. And because of this, they're learning a lot about individual birds. So here's what I learned from talking to them about my favorite gull now, U10. I learned that gulls are very individual and only a small percent of gulls will steal food. Most of them are not interested in stealing from you, but gulls are just very specialized in terms of the ways they get their food. And so a small number of them are really good at stealing food, and they will actually watch your eyes, watch where you're looking, to figure out whether it's time to steal your food. And they will preferentially steal food that you were handling because they know that you only handle the tastiest of the food. I also learned the U10 was once recorded begging for Cheez-Its from a 4-year-old who called him a very good friend. So I think we can also say he's a very good friend who loves Cheez-Its. I also learned that U10 is at least 15 years old and he could be 30 plus years. So he was in adult plumage when he was banded, and herring gulls can live so long. So I think the longest lived one in captivity was over 40 years. And in the wild, they can live to be 30 years or plus. So he's could be an incredibly long-lived bird. Here he is in his special nest. He has decided, unlike all other birds, he wants to nest under a structure on Appledore Island all alone. That way, no other gulls bother him, and he and his mate don't get rained on. So he's a little bit of a super genius. He is also a devoted partner and a great dad, so he exhibits extended parental care for his babies. He'll take care of them for longer than expected, and then he hangs out with his mate in the off season, which many gulls do not do. And finally, I learned that someone stole from him once too. So this is the most famous, besides U10 gull from Appledore. This is Tui-2, a huge great blackback gull, terrifying gull. I've met this gull in person. There are a lot of terrifying photos of him eating giant dead seals and killing various things. And he once stole fish from U10. And U10 hopped on a rock and screamed at Tui-2 for a solid 5 minutes, which I thought was very relatable. I also learned that gulls are a conservation success story, which I think is really incredible, as we don't pat ourselves on the back enough about our success stories. So I knew that in the 1870s and 1880s, a lot of people were killing birds like great egrets and terns to get their plumes for hats for the millinery trade. What I did not know was this was also happening with gulls, and people were wearing items like this from the Brooklyn Museum. This is a scarf, or what's called a tippet, and a muff, a hand warmer made of full gulls. Like, I don't know why you would do this. Like, the thing around your neck is kind of like a huge gull snake, just absolutely bizarre. And so conservationists worked really hard to stop this trade and bring gulls back. And so they are a big success story. These days, some gulls are declining again, including U10 and 2E2 species, the American herring gull and the great blackback gull. We don't know what specifically is causing this, whether it's changes in fisheries, oil spills, climate change, harmful algal blooms due to warming waters. There's a lot more research that we need to do. But I love what conservationist Rosalie Barrow Edge has said, which is the time to protect a species while it is still common. So gulls can teach us not to take our abundant native birds for granted. So really important lessons from gulls. And one way that people are appreciating gulls is that there is a program, I don't know what I would call this. It's the UK Championship Gull Screeching Contest. I don't know who runs it, but they're trying to promote appreciation of gulls by getting people to screech like a gull. And so here is the winner from 2 years ago. This is still one of my favorite videos. The winner of the EU Championship Gull Screeching Contest.
3, 2, 1.
He's a champion seagull impersonator. As an intrigued crowd of Belgian seagull enthusiasts watch on from outside, the judges give 9-year-old Cooper nearly top marks.
So absolutely delightful gull appreciation there. And in my most recent book, I slipped in a little tribute to U10, my book, The Birding Dictionary. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about this book, The Birdwatching Dictionary. So I have a new dictionary called The Birding Dictionary, a tongue-in-cheek guide for people who find themselves obsessed against all logic and reason with birds. And it's a humorous birdwatching dictionary with real terms and silly definitions. And so under the definition for band, I included a little image of U10's band. And I'm not going to go through this definition, but you can see that there's this little tribute here. But I did want to share a few of the definitions because I thought you might find them amusing. So my challenge with this book was to include definitions that appeal to everybody, but also to specialized birders. This is really important to me. This was something, a goal I set myself, because I want people to feel included, and not everybody knows all of those birding terms, and that doesn't make you any less of a birder. So here's the kind of definition I had for sort of everybody. Hopefully everybody, maybe nobody would appreciate it. An egg is a noun meaning a sort of small rock that often has a bird in it. A goose is just a duck with a larger bite radius. And then for more specialized birders, I have definitions like pish, the act of making a pish pish sound with your mouth to mimic the alarm calls of songbirds. When you pish, one of two things will happen. Either a spectacular flock of songbirds will surround you, filling your heart with joy, or absolutely nothing will happen and your pishes will sputter out until you stand in silent humiliation. Good luck. For FOY, here's what I have to say. So this is FOY is an acronym meaning, oh, it's not letting me, there we go. An acronym for first of year, an expression used to indicate the first time a birder sees a species during a calendar year. Other related acronyms include FOS, first of season, LOY, last of year, LOS, last of season, FOOY, first oriole of year, FOOOY, first orchard oriole of year, FOOOY, first obvious orchard oriole of year, FOMO, fear of missing orioles, FPS, finches per season, FUBAR, the first unicolored blackbird at refuge, and FWIW, first waxwing in winter, and finally FOIA, freedom of information, and HINGA. My editor was really, really kind in letting me include some jokes that maybe only I find funny. I wanted to mention, I included a bird that a lot of folks don't know about, and I have definitely never seen the unicolored blackbird. So I thought this might be an interesting one to talk about. So this is a bird that I think really lives up to its name. So here's where it's found in parts of South America. And it is a beautiful bird that is head to toe black with these black legs, black bill, black eye. I will say though, the female is not unicolored, and this is maybe the example that most frustrates me about a bird that is named for the male but not the female. So here is the female unicolored blackbird. And I just want to say, why did we name this bird the unicolored blackbird? Imagine this is the first one that you see, and this is one of the most colorful blackbirds I've ever seen in my life. So a spectacular, poorly named species. This book gave me a chance to have a lot of fun and be very silly. Like, for example, the definition for pun. That's a joke whose humor relies on using a word that has multiple meanings or on a word that sounds like another word. Birders both love and hate puns. They can be funny, but also groan-worthy. When considering whether to deploy a pun or cannot, take stock of the situation and consider all the consequences. Is your contribution going to contribute to the conversation? Will it turn out okay such that everyone will think you're funny from here and out? Or will people think you're a real piece of work? What trogan to do if the experience leaves you bitter and full of egrets? You're likely to decide that there are better ways to spendale time. Yes, so I'm sorry to anyone who does not like puns. You are completely heard and understood, and I will not use any more. A lot of the definitions in my book celebrate the joy and obsession of birders. So every year I go to this part of Ohio called this event in Ohio called the Biggest Week in American Birding. And every year I admire the license plates of the people who have driven all the way to McGee Marsh, which is kind of their flagship location, and has a huge parking lot. And they have license plates like Warbler, Bee Buzz, Skua, and Kiwa, which is Kirtland's warbler. And so I suggest some license plates that people can have. So I have a metal identification plate. As a driver, you are legally required to place a license plate on your car. As a birder, you are legally required to come up with a bird-related vanity plate for your car. Here are a few options, and the beginner plates include burden, iBird, birders, songbird, chickadee, goldfinch, warbler, and cardinal. Advanced license plates include limpkin, oology, empids, bittern, mudbat, guillemot, tube-nose, and cloaca. So please get one of these and send me a picture. I also poke fun at other nature lovers in my book. So I consider myself a herper too. That's someone who is really into reptiles and amphibians. So here I am doing my favorite thing in the whole world. And so here's my definition of herper. It's like a birder, but for reptiles and amphibians. The study of herps is technically called herpetology, and people who search for herps on a casual basis are known as herpers. If you encounter a person who is lifting up rocks or logs and peering under them, they're either a herper or a really ineffective birder. Herpers are quick to point out that birds are technically herps, since all birds descend from reptiles. Birders, however, are quick to point out that they don't regularly get peed on by toads, which is a thing that happens a lot if you're a herper. I learned a few new things while I was researching this book. One of them was the term gas hawk. I did not know about this term. A friend suggested I include it. So that is slang term for aircraft. Gas hawks are easily distinguished from goshawks because they rarely show barring on their upper parts or streaking in juveniles, and because they don't flap their wings very much unless something has gone terribly wrong. And then I knew what an IBA was, but I had to Google it in order to make sure that I had the correct definition. That is short for Important Bird Area, a region that is of critical importance to birds. Spearheaded by BirdLife International and supported by partners around the world, the IBA program works to identify, monitor, and protect areas that are essential to avian survival. But another thing came up when I Googled IBA, and so I wanted to share that with you. IBA is also short for Iron Butt Association, a group of people who promote extreme long distance motorcycle riding. In case you're a motorcyclist and you picked up the wrong book, hopefully your butt is okay. And they have their own patches that they get. This is the Iron Butt Association's patch for riding 1,000 miles or 24 hours or 1,000 miles in 24 hours. I'm not sure. It's the Dusty Butt patch. And once I shared this, and I did in fact get someone in the audience who was part of the Iron Butt Association. I thought that was wonderful. I also got to share some more obscure terms that I thought people would find fun, like catastrophic molt, which is going to lead me into my very last story. This is when a bird molts a large number of its feathers at once. The word catastrophic may seem overly dramatic, but one day you'll find yourself face to face with a cardinal that has lost all of its head feathers and looks like a demon plotting to sell you to Satan for a fistful of suet. Then you'll understand. Okay, so here is what that looks like. So this is a molting cardinal that has lost all of the feathers on its head. And these balding cardinals have been a source of some wonderful connections for me. And so connections are very important. And so I'm going to end on a story about emotional connections. And so I try to teach people about birds and other wildlife, but I also try to connect them emotionally. And that's partly for me because it makes me feel better. And it's also partly because I feel like that's an important tool for conservation. And I like connecting with people because making comics can be very vulnerable. I'm trying to be funny, but I'm alone in my room, hoping that what I'm coming up with is funny. But then if I kind of step out there and put myself out there, it often leads to amazing connections. So people really worry about these bald cardinals that they see a lot. Here's a Reddit post from Ornithology. Is this normal molting? He comes every day and is now totally bald on top. Here's another panicky one. This person says that this bald cardinal associates with other cardinals without issues, which I think is funny. I don't know what they expect to happen, maybe teasing. And then this person just says, what is going on with this cardinal with these horrified emojis? And so a while back, I decided, okay, I'm going to make a comic that mentions that this is just a molt, but also includes a joke. So I made a comic called Know Your Northern Cardinals. And so there's the juvenile cardinal, the adult male, Blood Sheep, the frightful molt demon of the cursed abyss, and the adult female. And so this was a really silly thing. I did not know if people were going to find it funny. I honestly kind of worried that they wouldn't. And so I put it online, and a few people thought it was funny, and I thought, okay, that's fine. And then we moved on. And then last summer, a friend of mine pointed out that there is a subreddit that's kind of a subgroup on the website Reddit where a bunch of people get together and like thousands of people, and they talk about their blood sheeps. And so they get together and they share photos of balding cardinals. I love this one here, my finest blood sheep portrait yet. And they have expanded the blood sheep universe. So here's a blue sheep that's a blue jay, a brown sheep that's a brown thrasher, a green sheep that's a green jay, a grackled sheep, and so many more, which I think is just incredible. They've taken it and they've run with it. They've also made Christmas ornaments and other crafts, including this beautiful ornament that says transform, which I think is wonderful. And so I posted on the subreddit and I said, I'm the cartoonist who drew the original blood sheep. A friend told me about this subreddit and I'm so happy. It's so beautiful. Happy birding. And I didn't want to, ruffle any feathers or make a big deal out of it, but they all decided that I am the queen sheep. And so I can end my career happy now. It has ended, and I'm not ending my career, but this is one of the funniest and weirdest things that has happened to me. And so it made me really happy. So connections like this are what keep me going, and similarly connections like what I just had with you today. So I want to say that I am so grateful to do this work, and I hope my books and comics and my long rants about ordinary birds can teach you something, but also connect with you and lift your mood. And I hope you enjoy the Birding Dictionary, and I hope that it makes you feel like you have gotten your hands on something you're not supposed to, and you're stealing it away with no criminal repercussions. So thank you so much, Mendocino, and I am going to take some questions now. I really appreciated your time. Thank you.
Well, thank you. That was fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah, I apologize for my throat going a little wonky there. I had a really horrendous flu last week, and then I thought every day I'm much better, but I clearly had one moment of I feel a little woozy, but I'm okay. I had water and I'm good.
Yeah, no worries. And kudos for soldiering through. The
Oh
last time
gosh, it's good to see people. You know how it is when you're
I do.
entombed in the flu for a long period of time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
same here.
somebody wants to know if you actually did take any art classes in college, but it sounded
Uh,
like you were discouraged from doing so.
so I think by arts I meant so I majored in arts, like I got a BA, but it was arts as in like anthropology, not arts as in visual arts. So no, I didn't go to art school. I've taken a few classes here and there, but I'm more trained as a writer than I am as an artist. I just kind of do my best. I mean, anyone can make cartoons. Luckily, the bar is low. And just, have a great time with it, and you can draw stick figures and yeah, do what you like for sure.
Well, there's a lot of people that found it laugh out loud
Oh.
funny as well as both entertaining and interesting.
Oh, someone says the background picture is my idea of ID hell. Yeah, so it's mostly dowitchers, and I know which ones, I don't know. Godwits, and then there's, I think that's a Dunlin. Yeah, it is kind of a nightmare. I'm sorry for upsetting you. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Any other questions? Let's see if I missed any.
I
Oh, I
think
don't.
people are just blown away by the creativity
Oh,
and the obvious deep understanding of birds. I guess my question would be, with a degree in anthropology and an interest in art and all of that, where did you get so much knowledge about birds? You clearly understand them and have quite a grasp of the scientific understanding of
well, I appreciate that.
birds.
I went back to school after floundering for a while, and I was really lucky to go to a program called the Field Naturalist Program at the University of Vermont. So I got an MS, and it was amazing. It was 2 years of I don't know how to describe it even. They try to turn you into a naturalist. So you do everything from making a plant collection, you take geology, you take soil ecology. It was the hardest 2 years I've ever had. And then they always
Mhm.
bring in one artist. So I was the one artist, and they had us do rather than a thesis, you kind of write a reflection based on a practical project. So I made a website about climate change that I coded and wrote the and illustrated and stuff. So I got to have a little bit of a scientific background, but mostly I learned how to do research. So all my facts come from much smarter researchers who I have interviewed a lot. So that piece on house sparrows, holy crow, did I do more research than was required. I talked to maybe 10, 15 people. I read every book. Yeah. It was this little tiny piece. I kept saying, I need more words. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that I'll just put in a plug. We just interviewed Professor Mark Davis of the Macalester College, and we didn't talk specifically about house sparrows, but it was all about the nativist paradigm, the controversy about nativism versus non-natives, and his a big part of his take is the terrifying similarity in language between the way people describe non-native species and the way people describe
You're
non-native
kidding. Okay,
humans.
I need to look this guy up. That's fascinating.
Yeah, look him up.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah, because
written
I
some
was
really.
floored when I was reading about, I didn't want to get too polemical when I was reading about the house sparrows. I mean, it was just, and to think about the fact that my dad growing up was the kid of Italian immigrants in the tenements, surrounded by every kind of immigrant in New York City. And house sparrows were as a gateway bird for him. And, thinking about how much hate was thrown on, my ancestors and then, and modern parallels. And so it was really fascinating. Oh, someone's making, yeah, I do say holy crow a lot. I think that's unintentional. But yeah, the history I think is important because we're doomed to repeat it if we don't know it. And
Yeah.
I honestly did not know this history. And it's not just upsetting, it's also funny. I mean, honestly, the Sparrow War is mostly these two ornithologists, Brewer and Cows, yelling at each other. And then Brewer passes away. And Cows, for decades afterwards, is just ripping into Brewer. And he has this thing he wrote in his own publication that's something like, dying makes a big difference to the person chiefly concerned, but has no effect on whether you should be kind to him. And, it's just people are
Wow.
just so livid about sparrows.
Just would not let it lie. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
very,
are
very
you
funny.
familiar with the Chinese Sparrow War?
Yes, so it's funny because when I say Sparrow War, people always assume, and I think it's the Asian tree sparrow, right? That Mao declared war on the four pests. So it
Yeah.
was sparrows, I forget what they were, locusts, rats, something else, I don't remember. But yeah, and so that's what people here assume. And I think it's telling that when we hear about a goofy sparrow war, we think about the Chinese one, but we don't think about the one we had,
Yeah.
which was just as goofy and had poetry wars in it. Like just So the full poems are hysterical. I mean, the one that's pro sparrow is just like, this is the most incredible bird that has ever appeared in North America. Ugh. Yeah, amazing, amazing.
Nothing like that 19th century writing style, huh?
Ugh, over the top. Yeah, yeah, exactly. These intelligent men. Also, the idea that a small group of intelligent men could make a decision that affects all of us every day because we see these birds all the time. It was just
Yeah,
incredible.
yeah,
Intelligent, I put in quotes. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Let's see.
Somebody suggests a book of vilified birds.
So I'm actually working on a pitch for a book um, that I want to happen, which would be a collection of essays about backyard birds that does sort of like what I did for the pigeon, but with for a whole bunch of them. So it would be, I think the most interesting one to me right now is the house finch, which is, you have native house finches, I'm assuming, right? Yeah. So in the east, do you see house finches? Do you tend to see house finches in Mendocino?
Oh
Okay,
yeah,
good.
lots
Yeah,
of them.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
mhm,
Yeah, I
yeah.
wasn't sure like where,
I'm not sure
like, are
anybody
they more southern
knows
or?
how native they are here because they originally
Right.
were native to the southwestern desert region. But
Yeah, yeah. So they've spread in the west, but they've also they appeared in the east, and it was in around the, I think I want to say the 1940s. And that was because the Migratory Bird Treaty Act banned the keeping of birds as pets, but there was native birds as pets, but an underground trade of house finches, and so they were brought to New York. They were sold as Hollywood finches,
Hollywood finches,
and
yeah.
then yeah, and then the cops showed up, and so the smugglers released their birds out the back, and because their goods could fly, and so that's why house finches are in the east, is because of an illegal trade.
And that
Um,
whole population sprang from a really tiny number of birds. They think like maybe 50.
Yeah, which is partly why they all got conjunctivitis, which cut their population in half, was they were super genetically bottlenecked.
Yeah,
Also, they have taught themselves to migrate. Like half the population or more migrates now. It's truly incredible. Like we have
it
created
is.
our own species. Oh yes, someone mentions, what about the love-hate relationship with so many of us have with ravens? So the reason I haven't talked about corvids is because there's this woman named Kaylee Swift, who is like the corvid person. She does amazing corvid outreach, and I feel like there's a lot of really good corvid outreach out there. So there's a lot of really cool stuff, but they are not birds that I know a lot about. They're intimidating to me because I love pigeons. They're not as smart as ravens, so they're easier
Mhm.
to look at.
Almost, yeah, very few things are as smart as ravens. One of the big
Yeah,
problems with ravens, corvids in general, but ravens in particular, is they're way too much like humans.
yeah, yeah,
Extremely,
yeah,
they're
absolutely.
so intelligent that they actually get bored and need to find ways to amuse themselves.
Yeah,
And
like dropping things on us
yeah,
and
ripping things to shreds. Yeah.
oh, someone says humor and art have often is often found in politics. Have you done political commentary? So I have. If you go to my Instagram, you'll see I did one recent one. I don't do a ton of political comics, but I have done, well, I guess they count as political, but I've done a lot of climate change comics. And so you can go online. If you go on my website, there's my Bird and Moon comics. And then if you scroll down, there's a whole section on climate change ones. So I've done some of those too. So yeah, I'm not a political cartoonist like 100%, but I feel like you can't make art without doing a little bit of it. So I've for sure been doing some of that.
Since
Yeah.
almost everything has been politicized, it's hard to do anything that isn't in some
Yeah,
way political.
exactly. Yeah, so it feels important to speak out. And what's been interesting is that in this recent one, I got some hate mail, which was AI generated, which was the first time that's happened to me. And I
Getting
could
used to
tell
it.
because it didn't really match what I had made, but it was beautifully written and had complete paragraphs. And I was like, what on earth?
Hmm.
Anyway,
Weird.
fascinating,
Well,
fascinating.
I'm sure you get this question a lot. Oh, there you go. There's a question, an
Oh,
easy one.
where do I get my shirt? This is a Duluth Trading Company. Yep,
Oh,
people who need, especially women who need outdoor shirts. They've got men's stuff too, I think. But they're amazing. They do really good outdoor gear. But this is a discontinued pattern, so I had to buy it somewhere really like an online reseller. So this is a used one. But Duluth Trading Company. It's actually some of the birds are a little odd looking. Like this cardinal is very suspicious. Yeah. So, you were going to ask a question there, but yeah, Duluth Trading Company. I'll type that in.
Well, I'm sure it's a question you get asked all the time because I do, and almost everybody who's a birder gets asked this. Do you have a favorite bird?
Yeah, it's such a good question. So I usually say Laysa and albatross, which I have never seen. We were talking about this earlier. I think they're cool because, even before I knew about Wisdom, the famous one,
Hmm.
I just love that albatrosses, those ones were some of the most studied ones early on, and their life cycles are just incredible to me. I love a long-lived bird. I think those ones just have very fancy looking faces. But it's hard
They
to say a
do.
bird that I haven't even seen. For a lot of years, my nemesis bird, which is a bird you want to see and it should be achievable and you just keep missing it, was the spruce grouse. And then I got that last year, and that has to be one of my favorites. They are amazingly weird. And once you finally run across them, they don't care. They just
Yeah.
stand there yelling at you, and they were a joy.
My dad used to call them fool hens.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And we have some ruffed grouse here too that will just kind of come up and hang out and peck at you and yell at
Yeah.
you.
Isn't it
Yeah.
weird? Yeah.
Yeah.
Grouse are super weird birds, actually. Yeah.
They're so strange. Yeah,
W-
they feel almost human. So I think I'd say some kind of grouse.
Well, you must come out here, and we'll take you out on a boat
I
and
really
try and
should.
get you a
Yeah.
lacing.
Yeah, I would love to. Yeah. And like I said, I did the Godwit Days Festival, and that was an absolute blast. Is there a Mendocino bird festival, or is there a nearby one?
There isn't. Godwit Days is probably the closest. It's about
Yeah.
3 hours north of us.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
if anyone has, an entire lifetime's worth of free time, they should start one up because those things are a blast. They're really, really fun.
It would
Yeah.
be cool, but man, oh man, we barely can do what we're doing already here.
Gosh, I don't know how anyone who does them. There's so
I
much
don't
work.
either. It's so much work. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm doing one in a few weeks. I'm going to Colorado to do the Monte Vista Crane Festival, which is really exciting. And then in May, I'm doing Biggest Week in American Birding. Oh, someone says, Tim, you can do it. And then in the fall, or in August, I'm doing Arizona. So yeah, I'll be at a couple this year, but that's all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll bet you're very popular at those festivals. Yeah. Yeah.
I have fun. Oh, someone says, see you in Colorado. Yay! This is so I've never been to Colorado, and I had been waiting for an invitation to Colorado because I was like, I have to go. So
Oh my
yeah.
God, Rosie Finches.
Yeah, yeah. Oh my God, everything. I'm so excited. And
Yeah.
it's a crane festival, so thousands of cranes. It's gonna be
Oh yeah, nice.
yeah, yeah.
Well, if anyone else has a question, I mainly just want to come up with questions so I can keep talking to you all night long because you really
Oh,
are not just a great cartoonist and illustrator, but you're just a lot of fun to talk with.
well, thank you. Yeah, no, likewise. I mean, I know I wasn't like quite at 100% healed up, but gosh, I needed to talk to some humans, so I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
It
Well,
was pretty
we
much just
appreciate
me
you
and you two.
recovering just in time for us, right?
Gosh, yeah, yeah.
Uh,
It was
yeah.
touch and go. Yeah. Well, I got sick last Sunday, so I figured there was no way it was going to keep going.
And but it can, yeah, the flu can definitely hang in there.
Yeah, avoid this one if you can.
Well, I sure appreciate you doing it. It's getting pretty late out there where you are too, right?
Yep. Yeah, I'm in East time, but yeah. Yeah, so I'm a little sleepy. Oh, someone says best place to get your books. I like so luckily all my books are still in print except an older collection called Birding is My Favorite Video Game, and that one is coming back to print. I don't remember exactly when, but sometime soon. You can get all my books through your small local bookstore. So that's my favorite place is go to your small local bookstore. They probably won't have them, definitely won't have all of them, but they can order them for you. And so that's usually what I say is
Yeah, Gallery
go.
Bookshop in Mendocino. If they don't have them, they'll definitely order them. They have a lot of bird books in there.
Excellent. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh yeah,
great.
lots of bird books. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Or ask your library to purchase them. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's also really cool. Yeah. 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 Thank you, everybody.
Yeah. You're a big hit. Yeah.
Oh, thanks, folks. And yeah, thanks again for bearing with me when I had a moment of my voice box being like, no, thanks. It wasn't too bad, but I was a little worried there for a
No,
second.
yeah, you came through just fine. Well, much appreciated and finish recovering because we need a lot more of your output. The stuff you're doing is not only entertaining, but I think important. I think just what you said in the talk that just catching people's attention and focusing it on things is a big part of what you do, I think, and it's much appreciated.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I couldn't do it without people reading and responding, so I really appreciate everybody being here. And yeah, and thank you. And thank you for making me jealous of that I'm not in California. I'm going to be having California dreams tonight.
Yeah, it's been unbelievable weather actually. We always get a false spring in January usually for about a week, sometimes 2 weeks of just this glorious, beautiful, warm, sometimes the warmest weather of the entire year. Be right in the middle of winter. And then
You're crushing me.
it's a sucker punch because, later winter comes back and just knocks us. And this time the fall spring has lasted for about 5 weeks.
Oof, yeah.
It's just been unbelievable. It's just about to end, though. It's going to start pouring rain on us in a few days,
Oh gosh.
which
Well,
is
good
good.
luck.
We
Yeah, rain
desperately
is
need it.
good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 And the birds dig it.
Yeah. Worms, all that good stuff.
You bet. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, thank you again. Thanks, and thanks to Mary too. And yeah, I
Oh yeah,
appreciate it.
big thanks to Mary for reaching out and making this happen. This is a big deal for us. So I think that probably is gonna about do it for us.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah. Great. Again, thank you. And I'm gonna go pass out.
I'll just stop the recording then.